In the center of my world, he appeared. With flowers in hand, 30 roses, one for every year I had waited to be kissed in the twilight. Days gone, when I longed for warmth like this, felt like home, in the folds of my dreams where once wrong resided. Now, everything was just right, and the next chapter of my life was on the horizon. I awoke, and sunset had painted itself perfectly pretty. The sky sang to my heart as I prepared to surrender my life to this man who completed me in every way. My prayers had begun to repay. The angels pulled my name that day and had chosen to be kind. He is my fantasy on steroids. Endless skyscraper around every corner. I had searched for his silhouette, looked for his face, staring at me in puddles after it rained, wrote letters to him. On lonely days when my heart felt like it could no longer be contained, I couldn't wait to be in his embrace, couldn't wait to fathom another moment without him in my space. His hands intertwined with mine for a lifetime, and now the love I'd known existed for a lifetime was waiting, and I was ready. Had never been more ready for someone who understood who I really was, loved me for me, not because I was extraordinary, because on some days I wasn't, but he said he can see my beauty in the shadows, carried on about the light in my eyes. I looked over in the distance to the place where he stood, and suddenly a smile broke wide on my face. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the moment I was missing. Here, where every hope and hidden secret was woven into fairy tale just for me. The man of my dreams was waiting to take me into forever, and I just knew there was nothing that greater that had happened to anyone else ever. And before I realized what was happening, I started running, racing the wind to arrive by his side. He turned, and I saw him beaming with pride, and I knew then he would love me right, because he had proven himself faithful so many times. On dark days when he could have walked away, but he chose to stay, and suddenly tears began running down my eyes. Happiness bursted inside my chest like fireworks. It was April, but it felt just like 4th of July. My spirit was finally free, so I ran to the place where he stood as fast as I could, ran like I was obsessed. And just before I reached him, the room went black. The place shifted, and I stopped in my tracks, for there my groom was, kneeled down, praying in a pool of blood and sweat, surrounded by life in a little garden on the eve of his death. And he looked up at me for a second while I catch my breath. Jesus, I said, why aren't you dressed? This is the part where you turn water into wine, make meals for the merry in honor of our union. And he said, this is the place where I keep every promise I made. I make sure every promise I made was kept. This is the place where I make sure every seed I planted is blessed, and that evil does not overtake your aching heart, choke the abundance out of your life. I know you pictured it differently, but this is how I play my part. And before I could reply in protest, the Roman guards came and carried him off. Who would have thought I would have my honeymoon at the mouth of a tomb, open as wide as the size of the womb, left from a string of past lovers. He had everything I had ever done before him, covered, resurrected, like the morning sun after carrying my carcass atop a hill on a cross, where God was like a mission impossible for me to ever ascend without him. Love, like 1,000 forevers. It's funny, these love stories are all just evil turned romance, happily ever afters from horrific circumstance. Every single one of them since the beginning of time is about us. It's about us. In a dark world where he spills his blood to make wife of Gomers, I know my groom well now. And this is how he loves in the aftermath. This is how he loves. I am glad that this is how he loves.
See, we are his portion, and he is our prize. We're drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. If grace is an ocean, then we were all sinking. Now heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. And I don't have time to maintain my regret when I think about the way